Well, when you have the former boss of HUL India in the office and in our studio, you don't need to introduce the value, the knowledge and the experience he will bring on table. But for me, this show is all about understanding, learning and perhaps understanding the new horizons of what is happening in the entire consumption stroke FMCG space. From disruption to legacy brands, from good old players to the incumbents, are they getting challenged by some of the newbies? All that and much more on this very special show with none other than Mr. Sanjiv Mehta, former boss of HUL, a very dear friend and a visionary when it comes to making changes in HUL in his tenure. So nice to have you on ET Now. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely fabulous, Nikunj, to be here, and my greetings to all your viewers.
So how has life changed for you? I can still see that cup of tea. So does it still start with Vahataj in the morning or a cup of brew in the morning, or it has changed now?
It has always been Lipton Yellow Lip.
Okay.
That's how I start.
Loyalties don't change.
Absolutely.
But a lot has changed for Indian consumer, and the way the consumption basket has evolved post-COVID. There seems to be a big departure in what India was, where India is and where India is moving. What are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I believe India will be to consumption this decade and beyond what China was in the previous 2 decades. We have all the fundamentals in place to see a sustained growth, not only in the GDP of the country, but if the GDP has to grow, let's look at it from that lens, consumption has to grow. No questions about it.
The good old comparison is FMCG means rural India. If rural India is not growing, FMCG will not grow. And if I look at some of the incumbents and some of the legacy companies, I'm using the word legacy just to establish a point here, they've struggled in last 2 years when it comes to their volume growth. Why is that?
Thanks, Nikunj. It's very important to de-average and understand the numbers. If you look at pre-COVID, we had a good beat. And when you look at the construct of the headline growth, it consists of volume growth, price growth, and the mix that comes in. For a company like HUL, historically we had been delivering volume growth in the ratio of about 65 to 70% of the top line growth, which is a very healthy ratio, and that's how it ought to be. Now, if you look at 2021, or 2 years for there, the average, first the growth came down, understandably because of COVID, and then the world had supply chain issues, geopolitical issues, and then we had the unprecedented inflation. If you look at 22 and 23, the inflation in the whole basket of FMCG was to the extent of 9 and 11%.
Yes.
Now, this is something which is unprecedented. Yeah, it didn't happen certainly in my 8 years before COVID came in. And when you have this kind of inflation, it takes a toll on the volumes. And the volumes in urban area at one stage were flat. And because the incomes in rural India are much lower, the volumes turn negative. Now, that was a very natural reaction to the inflation that had happened. But if you were to look at a country and compare India with many other countries in the world, the headline growth of 8% in 23 was still very decent, very decent. That in many ways reflected the resilience of the economy. And if you come to 24, what has happened that the inflation which is there, it has either worn out or in many cases, there was a negative inflation. The commodity prices went down. So there has been a bounce back as far as the volumes are concerned. From minus 4% in rural areas, if you look at 24, the mid-June MAT numbers, they are back to 6% volume growth. That's a good bounce back. Yeah, so I am one, if we consider the entire macro picture, I'm not really very dismayed with what has happened on the FMCG consumption. It could have been far worse. In many ways, it indicates a very astute management of the economy. When we were growing up during the oil shocks, or even during the global financial crisis and its aftermath, just look at it. When the Fed said taper, the rupee crashed. Yeah, this time, the rupee has been very resilient. The economy has been very resilient. When we were growing, the tag that India could be the fastest growing economy, we couldn't have even imagined.
Yeah, from fragile 5, we become top 5.
Absolutely, but more important is, one has to look at it in a contextual perspective. There were the periods of 80s and 90s when Greenspan's famous words, an era of great moderation.
Yes.
That was also a period when the globalization was happening. And there was a huge tailwind for China when it had opened up the economy much before us. So during the 2 decades, China grew brilliantly at 8 to 10% consistently over a decade and beyond. Today we are talking about a much tougher scenario. Yeah, you are talking about inflation in the world. You are talking about supply side disruption still happening. Yeah, look at from a Middle East perspective, look at from a Houthi perspective. Whenever there are raids on Red Sea, the sea lanes get disrupted, the prices go up. There is also much more parochialism. The globalization is not at the same pace as it was earlier. And the global growth of the economy has come down to in the vicinity of 3%. The global trade is expected to bounce back to 2-3% from about 1% last year. In this context, for 3 years, delivering 8% growth and with macroeconomic stability. Look at your CAD, less than 1%. Look at your gross NPAs. From double digit, it's come down to 3%. Look at your forex reserves today. Look at your inflation today. Could we have imagined India having inflation lower than many of the developed countries? I think all this augurs tremendously well. And sometimes we forget to look at the trends that are shaping India from a long-term perspective. Pre-independence, India used to grow at 0.5%. Then when you look at the first 4 decades, where of course we laid down the fundamentals of industrialization, of the new India from a perspective of IITs and IIMs and heavy industry, but we still grew at a very meager rate of 3.5%, out of which nearly 2% used to go in population growth. Look at the last 3 decades. We are talking about a 6.5% CAGR.
And the nominal growth is actually in double digit, which
Absolutely.
is more important.
And so from that perspective, I see no reason why India, and if you look at last year, India contributed about 17-18% to global growth. That's the kind of India's contribution to the global economy it used to be before the Britishers came to India.
Fair point. So let's translate the big picture into specifics here. And you spoke about volume growth, and you're sounding reasonably confident that the turn in the FMCG volume growth, I think, is real. So now let's look at if India's per capita moves, which it will, from 2,500 to 4,000 and eventually 5,000, what happens to the consumption basket? How will it change? Will it be more? Will it be more premium? Will it be more products? How will it change?
Again, a very good question, Nikunj. If I were to look at all the categories that we operate in as a country, none of them are close to maturity.
Okay.
Take this wonderful cup of tea. Nearly every household drinks tea or coffee, universally penetrated, but there is huge scope to upgrade. Just look at green tea, for instance. The penetration is still very low. Infusions, still very low. Look at detergent powders, another category between, say, the detergent bars, soaps, and powders.
And now capsules.
Universally penetrate, right? But look at the penetration of liquids. It is again, yeah, at a very low number. Forget capsules. So the way I look at it, you could have growth in India through penetration, through increasing consumption or frequency of consumption, and through premiumization. And this applies to every category. Take oral care, yeah, toothpaste or tooth powder. In rural India, still 1 in 2 Indians do not brush their teeth every day. Yeah? If you look at urban India, only 20% of Indians brush their teeth twice a day. Yeah? I remember Philippines, when I used to be chairman of Unilever Philippines. After lunch, you go to the washroom, there would be a line of people brushing their teeth.
My dentist says the same. Brush your times, if at least once and maybe twice.
Yeah. And this is still not happening in India. So even a category as basic as oral care, we need to increase the frequency of consumption. Yeah. We need to move into night brushing. And here I'm still not talking about, if you look at the unit dosage, very few people put the whole toothpaste on your strip of brushes. Yeah? So that would again lead to consumption increase. So from every lens you look at it, penetration, yeah, frequency of consumption, consumption, and upgrading.
But specifically, why HUL has struggled with the industry average in the past?
Now look at HUL. Over the last 10 years, our top line in 2013 was 25,000 crores.
Yes.
When I left the business, and 10 years later, it was bordering 60,000 crores.
That includes the acquisition.
Also divestitures.
Okay.
If you were to remove the net, instead of 60,000 crore, it would be in the vicinity of 57,000 crore. Even if you take this, an addition of 30,000 crores, there is no other company in India, FMCG, which even comes close to 30,000 crore. You know, we forget, US will never grow at India's level. Yeah? But when US grows at that scale, at $25 trillion economy, at 2%, it adds significantly more than what you would be adding at 6% on a $4 trillion economy. Yeah. I'll give you another example.
Yes, please.
You know, this is something which often people would. My last year, which was the fiscal year ending March 23, HUL added 8,000 crores as a delta turnover in the last year.
Which is almost what Patanjali had 3 years ago.
8,000 crores in India would be called a good-sized FMCG company. Yeah, we talk about disruption. You add together the total turnover of all the D2C brands, they would struggle to reach 8,000 crores.
So do you see HUL coming back in terms of growth to India's GDP number?
No question.
Okay.
No question. You know, over the years, running businesses of Unilever for 22 years, I've kind of codified what it takes to make a great company.
Okay.
Yeah. First is the mindset that you bring in, what I call as the growth mindset. In many ways, this is very similar. This codification applies to a nation also. Yeah. So first is the growth mindset. You know, in our 30,000+ crores, we had added 10,000 crores of turnover from categories, excluding acquisitions, which didn't exist before. Yeah, like liquid detergents, like green tea, like fabric conditioners, like premium skincare. So in India, not only have you to straddle the price-benefit pyramid, but you also have to invest in market development creating categories of the future. The second axis of my troika of a high-performing company are distinctive capabilities which are hard to replicate.
Okay.
Let me pick two great examples. First is winning in many Indias. Winning in many Indias is looking at India from a very different lens. It is about, at its core, it is about de-averaging India, but very importantly, understanding the heterogeneity of Indian consumers. The tastes are different, the palate is different, the customs are different, the competitors are different, the per capita consumptions are different. Averaging India is a sin. Yeah, you will never be able to play big game. You can still operate in niches by averaging India. Yeah, but if you want to be a national player, a big player, never average India. The second is the journey that we had embarked on, reimagine HUL. Harnessing data and technology. Our Shikhar app, for instance, is the most adopted app in the country today by retailers. Over 1.5 million retailers adopt the app. And this app not only allows the retailer to place an order anytime they like, but very importantly, you can customize an assortment for each store. Yeah. Then you look at the first factory in India, which by World Economic Forum was treated as a lighthouse from digital and sustainability perspective, was again the HUL factory.
Yes.
Then you look at the many unique models that we have created, like Jarvis, for instance. You're able to optimize the different variables which drive growth and market share at a WIMI level. Coming back to WIMI, a lovely cup of Brook Bond tea, the blend is different in different parts of India depending on the palate.
Was it? I didn't realize this.
The pack would be same, but
I
it's
didn't realize
different.
this. It's that mass customization which has kicked in.
Surf Excel, depending on the hardness of the water, the formulation is different.
Oh, I didn't know this.
The Lux bar of soap, same bar of soap, white, the perfume is different depending on the preferences of consumers.
Okay. Now, one of the hallmarks, I just want to put this on table for our viewers. When you took over as the chairman of HUL India and versus by that time your tenure finished in March 2023, you took margins to a different level. We spoke about top line, but for us as, I mean, if I look at from a market standpoint, it was a firm march of margins north of 20 and it stabilized there. So has Sanjiv Mehta rebooted the margin line for HUL permanently for many years?
Look at it like this. You know, just like I have my troikas of high performance company, there's a troika of value creation. It has to be first growth, second margin, third capital velocity.
Okay.
We did not improve the margins by vacating the bottom of pyramid. That would have been a very easy call. We did not vacate Wheel. We did not vacate Clinic Plus. We did not vacate the price points.
Lifebuoy also.
Lifebuoy also.
Yes.
Our entire thrust was, how do we harness the collective wisdom and skills of thousands of HUL employees to remove non-value added cost? So we used to crowdsource ideas for efficiency and productivity improvement.
So 20%, 23, 24% is the new normal for HUL now?
Absolutely.
So if you have to look at, Mr. Mehta, the categories, which for an audience here who just want to understand from your experience and wisdom, which are the categories in India which are called mature categories, which will grow in single digit, which are the fast growing categories, and which are the categories which are at an experimental stage where you say, okay, I think this change is happening, I'm not so sure.
Yeah. First is, I would again like to correct you, there's no category which is matured in it.
Okay, fair point.
Yeah. There is growth opportunity everywhere.
Okay.
It's only the lens that you apply
fair point.
that would unlock the growth.
Fair point.
Yeah. So even look at detergents 10 years earlier. You would have come to a same conclusion. that detergents, difficult to grow
exactly.
and difficult to improve margins.
Yeah, yeah.
Look at the story of HUL on detergents. Completely unlocked the growth, completely changed the margin paradigm. Yeah, this could be done everywhere. But if I have to look at, say, from a global lens and ask myself, which are the segments which will, compared to, say, more developed countries, which are at a very nascent level, where the penetration is also very low. Of course, there are segments, like I said, liquid soaps. Yeah, we say nahane ka sabun.
Exactly.
So it's a very matured category. But look at liquid body wash, single-digit penetrations. And your experience for a consumer of using a liquid body wash is far superior to a bar soap. Yeah, and it lends itself to that experience. The richness of lather, the delivery of perfume, the lingering smell, all that comes in beautifully. So that again, toilet soap, someone might say it's a totally penetrated category. There is huge room to grow. But if I were to look back, say, beauty and well-being, foods, a very small part of our entire food consumption is still packaged food.
Okay.
Yeah, and that again, we will have to do the India way, catering to Indian palate, Indian taste, looking at it from a WIMI lens, and then growing the food segment. The other is beauty and well-being. I think still it is at a very nascent stage, and this is something which is going to grow in a secular fashion for years to come. The important bit is premiumization. You know, a thrust which we had was ensuring that our share of the premium portfolio becomes more competitive. And if I were to look at premium, Nikunj, it's not about the prestige, not even the mastige. I'm talking about with reference to the average of the market. If you take an average price of any category, the mass would be index 80 and below.
Okay.
Your popular would be between 80 and 120, and your premium would be 120 and above.
Plus, yeah.
HUL's portfolio of premium used to be in 20s.
Okay.
Over the 10 years, we increased it by 100 bips every year. It's now in 30s.
Wow.
And remember something, when your premium share goes up, the average table also moves up. That's math.
Yes, yes.
Right? So despite that, it is in mid-30s now. And I believe as India progresses, every Indian would aspire for higher order benefits. So the growth is also going to come from premiumization.
So we have a long way to go.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you know, a very simple figure if I give you. Put all the categories together, India's consumption is about $50.
Okay.
Forget the developed countries. Yeah, is Indonesia is nearly 2x India. China, 3x India. Philippines, 4x India.
4x.
Yeah,
So we have a long way to go before we catch up with global averages.
absolutely.
Mr. Mehta, one change which has happened is suddenly quick commerce is becoming big. And when I speak to some of your peers, they are now giving us data points that quick commerce is accounting for nearly 5 to 7% of their total business.
Yeah.
What is HUL's strategy and how important is quick commerce for them?
You know, I would not
Okay.
like to talk
But how
about...
do you see that changing for the sector?
Because, you know, I don't
I
have a remit
respect
for
that.
HUL.
I respect
It would
that.
be wrong for me. But let me give you a perspective. And more importantly, give you an idea about how India will evolve. Like India will be a multi-sectoral growth story. For India to grow sustained level at anywhere between 7 to 9%, 9 is what we aspire,
Yes, yes.
200 bips more, India will have to grow, of course, its services, which is on a good rhythm. India will have to grow manufacturing. India will have to grow agriculture. Yeah, I'll come back to agriculture in a while. So India's story will be very different from say the Asian tigers, which were just an export-led growth, India will have to have a different story. If I look at our channels today, the biggest channel still is general trade. Yeah? It will account for about 70% of the total trade, and millions of mom and pop stores and retailers dotting the landscape. Then you have the modern trade, which will be in the vicinity of 15%. Then you'll have institutions, which would be about 4-5%. And then you have the e-commerce, about anywhere between 7 to 10%. And within that, you have the quick commerce. Now, quick commerce, for the sheer benefit it gives, it's bound to grow at a faster pace. The sustainability of e-commerce would depend on the unit economics. Yeah? If they are able to sustain, if they are able to bring in unit economics, then it would become a sustainable thing for the sheer convenience it gives you. That today prevents a person who is managing the house from planning your pantry. Yeah, you know, we have seen our mothers on a monthly basis deciding how much of sugar they need, how much of detergent they need, how much of atta they need, and then going with the list and placing orders. Yeah, that's how we have seen our mothers do it. Today's person who does the housewife or the houseman doesn't need to plan it. Jab khatam kiya, order kar diya, aa gaya. Yeah? But quick commerce, अगर आप सोचें कि यूपी और बिहार के गांव में सक्सेसफुल होगा, नहीं होगा. Unit economics will never work. India, even after 10 years, your biggest channel will still be general trade.
Okay.
Its share will come down. I would still believe it would be over 50% after 10 years, but it will be highly digitized general trade.
So it will be a digital kirana wala who will be that's the future of India.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we must also remember that why as a country we need the kiranas to succeed. You know, simple math. There are about 10 million stores. There would be about 2 persons, the owner and another person working in on an average, 5 to a household. You are talking about 100 million people whose food on their table comes thanks to the kirana store. Even from a social perspective, India has to ensure that these kirana stores survive. And they will survive because of the sheer. India is not going to be the story from mom and pop stores to supermarkets, to the big box stores, to the e-commerce, a classical evolution. No.
So India is not what happened to America. Let me put it this way. We must realize that and we must endorse that.
You know, the relevance of big box stores in India is restricted to certain places. Even today, if you look at the modern trade format, it is the supermarket format which would be growing at a faster pace as compared to the big box stores. हमारे घर छोटे होते हैं. In a traffic like Bombay, going out to the suburbs, filling up your dicky and coming back, boot, and that doesn't happen in India. So India's trade evolution is again going to be a different story.
Okay. I've really extended my appointment with you, so I'll restrict it to just 3 more questions, and I'm just going to change gears here and talk about the competitive landscape. The big FMCG landscape is changing, and it is changing drastically. The Tatas have got renewed focus on food and quick commerce. ITC is popping right back up. HUL is in a sense expanding, and then there's Patanjali, which has become relevant in the market. How do you see the competitive landscape in the next 5 to 7 years changing for the big FMCG companies?
You know, competitive intensity is bound to go up.
Okay.
No question. For the sheer attractiveness of the market. I don't think, Nikun, there are any global boards which are not treating India seriously. In the last 10 years, I would have addressed about 10 global boards across sectors, from engineering to commodities players. Everyone wants to know about the India story. So there is bound to be competitiveness from the global players. The second is, thanks to e-commerce, the barrier to entry has come down significantly. Yeah? Till a certain stage of your brand's evolution, you can live just on e-commerce. Of course, if you have to go on a national level, you will have to go offline. There's no question about that. And look at the stories, whether it is Nykaa or Mama Earth. After a while, you have to go physical. Yeah? So competitive intensity is bound to go up. Now, in this scenario, the question is, if you were to again use the word legacy company, can the brands be timeless? I would believe they can, provided you're in tune with the needs of the people and make your brands contemporary.
Correct.
You know, the days of sitting on your large market share without renovating and innovating, those days are gone. There will be heightened competitive intensity, and those who are able to build great brands, have great capabilities, they would keep winning. So I believe, say for large companies in India who have been in the country, this is a massive opportunity because they have the scale, they have the capability, they have the talent. Similarly, for young entrants, the disruptors, it's a massive opportunity staring at them. And we must remember, India is not a zero-sum game. If one is winning, that doesn't mean the other necessarily has to lose, because the market will keep growing.
Final question, and this is not about HUL for sure, but if Sanjiv Mehta has to bet on any non-HUL company as an investor, which are the 3-4 companies you would bet on?
Oh, you know,
non-HUL, you can answer this one.
As part of my Catterton role,
Okay.
yeah, we are now looking at a series of potential investment companies.
Okay.
Yeah, because now I've moved from my
Executive role.
executive role to investment role and helping the entrepreneurs create value. You know, you would be amazed, Nikunj, the number of companies coming up in tier 2, tier 3 India in diverse categories.
Would you like to name some?
Who are doing a phenomenal job. At this stage, I would not like to name them,
Okay.
but I'll tell you, I have been very impressed.
Okay.
And they are very diverse categories. And it is so heartening to note that entrepreneurship is alive and kicking in not just in metropolitan India, but in tier 2, tier 3 India. And that gives me immense confidence in India's youth and the future of our country.
You know, Mr. Mehta, we started with the big picture and then we went to specifics. There is inspiration and advice for entrepreneurs. You've spoken about the FMCG category, and then perhaps the punchline was that, you know, this is just the beginning in terms of where we're headed. We've almost done 40 minutes with you. I know you have a tight schedule, so really appreciate your time and thank you very much for accommodating this request.
It's always been a pleasure, Nikunj. Yeah, over my last several years, we have engaged several times, but it's always been a pleasure, and my best wishes to your viewers.
Thank you very much.